Hello, I'm Dave Andrea, principal with the Plante Moran Mobility and Automotive team, and I lead our Supplier Relations Analytics group. And I'm pleased to share with you the summary findings of the 2023 Plante Moran Working Relations Index study with the Society of Automotive Analysts. This is the 23rd year that we have done this study, and it's an objective survey of how well the vehicle manufacturers are working with their production suppliers. Supplier relations have always been important, but now they're absolutely critical. In the short time, it's about the relationships about reducing the cost of doing business as well as reducing the cost of decision making. In the long run, it's all about the transition to electric propulsion, and that requires greater information exchange, fulfillment of commitments, and the rewards for high performing suppliers. And those are the three elements that the survey tracks for commercial trust. The survey really is complex because it's a complex relationship in automotive. It's 84 question survey. We also ask eight open-ended questions in the survey too, all about getting to the business practices, the buyer characteristics, and measuring that mutual trust between the vehicle manufacturers and their suppliers. And with the WRI, the questions, those 84, really fall into five buckets. It's about engagement and communication, about the reduction of and barriers and hindrances, assistance and help programs, mutual profitability on both sides, and trust. It's not that all of these are sequential, but they're all interrelated, and all of those buckets build off of each other. In the end, for both the suppliers and the vehicle manufacturers, it's about delivering product differentiation, uh, operational flexibility, launch support, risk mitigation, and also at the end of the day, competitive pricing. The survey by the numbers, it was 715 individual responses this year. Those executives were from 459 discrete companies. 69 of those 459 were from the top 100. So we know it's definitely representative by the dollar amount of production spend, but also with these 2,301 buying situations of each one of those companies, suppliers, how they deal with multiple purchasing groups within each of the OEMs, we know it's representative by the buying situations. So this is how the results came out this year, and it also gives you a time series going back to 2012 here. If I go through this really quickly from top to bottom, I would say Toyota's response this year, down 7 points, was really a slowing across the board. Particularly concerning, though, was a drop in their buyer characteristics in terms of Toyota's buyers' knowledge of the product as well as commercial process. Honda, it's all about a need to drive consistency in all of their relationships across their different purchasing groups. They ranged actually from 400 of very, very good in some purchasing commodities down to 300, which is average, which is good, but not certainly stellar that way. And focusing on the fundamentals. General Motors General Motors improved 10 years with in spite of all that its supply chain disruption. And really that's, I think they're challenging going forward is their continual reorganization of taking people out of General Motors, the microeconomics of looking at a possible the UAW negotiations this year, and also progression towards EV programs. Ford took the largest hit this year, and really they're struggling with solving simultaneous equations of looking at Model E, at their electric drive propulsion systems and platforms, as well as Ford Blue, and keeping the traditional Ford engine running and producing profits that way. Nissan increased as well and actually took over from Ford. They are really leveraging their supplier relationships as it builds into their corporate strategy of Ambition 2030 and their long-term electrification. And Stellantis took a huge bump up this year, of course, from last year's drop down to 128. They jumped up. First off, they are not back up to 2021 levels. So it's all about communication. It's about rebuilding trust with their supply base. And when we talk about commercial trust, that's really built on three fundamentals. It's about realistic expectations, it's about accountability, and about information sharing. And that goes both ways, from the vehicle manufacturer to the supplier, and the supplier responds in kind to the vehicle manufacturer. Looking at the comments, these really reinforce the importance of commercial trust. Looking at the transformation to electric vehicles, the suppliers were saying, don't increase our costs in the short term as you're asking us for more investment in the long term. In production schedule volatility, the vehicle manufacturers, for the most part, did take a hit in communications, even though they were communicating more. Because of the volatility in the production schedules, it was never right. It was never in sync. So those numbers, those ratings did go down. And then finally, we really saw this year that the supplier relationship is not just on the shoulders of purchasing. When we look at all the transformation going on here, it is absolutely critical that it's about the product development, it's about engineering, it's about manufacturing and quality, and particularly finance in here as well, to be aligned across all of those functional areas to support purchasing doing its job. Now, one thing we are able to do is plug in some topical questions every year, and certainly this year the microchip shortage was a big issue, and we asked very simple. It's not more complex than this. We asked, to what extent is the OEM's overall microchip-related supply chain management better than the general industry? And what we see from the results is there's a top tier, right, of Toyota, Honda, and General Motors, and there's the lower tier of Ford, Nissan, and Stellantis. GM took the lead overall of rating of 3.7 or 3.07 on our 5-point scale. And this was really about their command center approach that they took to this, as well as their plan for every part policy or practice that they played out that communicated well with the supply base here. The other area that we were diving into more is looking at all the ESG activities going on. And certainly that is becoming more complex for managing on both sides. And we asked a series of questions, one related in the electric vehicle transition here. How well is the purchasing organization staffed to source first generation EV products? We also asked, though, how well are your OEM customers' environmental objectives articulated to determine your investment in ESG? And then as well, how do the OEM customers provide support in meeting those environmental targets? And here again on the EV sourcing side, General Motors took the lead across all of the vehicle manufacturers. Again, it was in the middle, of a bit above to some extent, so it's not in a stellar position here, but they lead the pack. And then as well, looking at the OEM environmental objectives, the articulation of those and the assistance on those, Toyota actually surpassed General Motors. GM was in the lead last year. Toyota came out ahead because they're pushing out their organization on this and their assistance programs here. So in summary, let me just really quickly run through some reflections of this very complex and content-rich studies. But first off, the purchasing groups are absolutely being stretched from their transactional duties, doing the day-to-day job, as well as that transitional leadership to EV programs. Trust is going to play an absolute critical role in all of the contingency planning systems that are going on, trying for the OEMs to reach down into these battery supply chains. If there's not trust up top in terms of providing information and strategies, it's very, very difficult to get that in the second, third, and fourth tier. The EV product cycle plan detail is needed, and we know that those are going to change. We know that it's not a clear roadmap, but the suppliers at least need to know, where do they play? Are they going to be a part of the long-term supply chain for any individual OEM or not? The fourth bullet I would leave with you is that purchasing's internal communications and relationships are just as essential as their external. So this survey, without a doubt, is focused on the suppliers and the OEMs, those external relationships. But as we bring in finance and engineering and product development and manufacturing, it really is about purchasing's internal relationships as well, to bring those parties and resources to the table to get the job done. I think a crisis management mentality is absolutely essential in everything we do in the industry going forward, to reduce internal friction and costs. And we saw that with the microchip crisis. And I say that in everything that the industry faces, that crisis mentality from this standpoint. You're really looking at attacking the problem. You're bringing the resources together. And that's, again, on both sides, the OEM as well as on the supplier side. And my last takeaway for you all today is that with all of this greater complexity in the supply chain, with evolving cost structures, with the societal issues, with cybersecurity, and we could add on 10 other issues the industry is facing and dealing with, the industry really needs to put more investment both on the human side as well as technology resources to evolve and to improve the customer supplier relationship that way. So I thank you. We ran through a lot of the top level survey results with you. Here's my contact information. Certainly feel free to reach out to discuss any of these issues further, or to discuss your own supplier relationships with your customer base. Thank you.